Welcome, travelers, to another chapter of Jaguar Woman. Today is Tuesday, October 12th, 2021, 8:46 p.m. here in California, United States. Let's begin. Chapter 9: A Sorcerer's Shadow. From the tangle of the two and exchange surprises, the bear and the deer become a tree. We might see whole jungles emerge from an embrace. Elizabeth Heron, suppose. Early in the afternoon, Agnes announced that she was returning to the hacienda. I was to stay with Zoila. Do you want me to walk with you, Agnes? I prefer walking alone. And suddenly she was gone. Several children were in the house laughing, fighting, causing a commotion. I had not thought much about Zoila's home life. I knew she was a grandmother, but I had no idea how old she was. As with Agnes and Ruby, she appeared elderly sometimes and then quite young at other times. It seemed to be a natural aspect of this extraordinary woman, and their unbounding energy, ordinarily associated with youth, served them well. Are these all your grandchildren, Zoila? I asked, watching a 9-year-old girl named Rosa chasing a chicken out of the room we were in. Rosa stopped in a mid-stride, and the frenzied chicken ran ahead of her, flapping its red and purple wings and squawking loudly. Rosa looked up at me with a big, black button eyes and said, "Hi, Lynn," and then resumed her chase. She is my daughter, Marilia's girl. How many daughters do you have? I asked. Somehow, I hadn't thought of Zoila with children, even though she was a grandmother. I have seen children, 4 daughters, and 3 sons. A good number, no? They all have their own families now, and they are all very happy. Later, we weeded in the garden. Zoila had a green thumb and took special care of all of her plants, many of them herbs. She cut some tubular grasses that looked like Mormon tea, and then took me inside and showed me how to tie them and hang them up to dry. Only for a day, she said. Then we used them. We swept the dirt floors and washed the dining table and chairs. I chopped some wood with an axe. The logs were difficult to split. I carried several pails of water from the stream. Zoila told me to take a short rest while she peeled some chilies for dinner. I slept as the late afternoon rain cleared the air. I dreamed of the whirlpool until, feeling its strong pull, I awoke. Zoila was not in her hammock, so I got up and looked around. I saw 2 people silhouetted against the setting sun, embracing in the doorway. It was Zoila with a man. There was a great tenderness and warmth in their movements. I wanted to hide and was surprised that I was blushing. I was slinking into the house, embarrassed, when Zoila called to me. "Lynn, I want you to meet someone." Walking around the hammock, I went across the porch and into the yard. "This is Jose, my husband." But I thought, well, I don't know what I thought. I didn't, I guess. "Buenas tardes, Jose," I said. We shook hands, and he held mine warmly. His palms and fingers were strong and rough from work. He was dressed in loose white pants and shirt, and wore simple leather sandals on his broad, well-shaped feet. His presence delighted me. I stared at his face. His salt and pepper hair was neatly combed, and it set off his darkly tanned skin to a great advantage. "Your husband is very handsome," I said. Zoila elbowed me, giggling. "What's the matter with you, Lynn? You look so startled. Didn't you know I had a husband?" "I guess not," I mumbled. "Excuse me, I'm delighted to meet you, Jose." We went in the house. Jose laid down several bundles wrapped in newspaper on the counter, then handed me a small bundle. I was surprised. "For me?" He nodded. Zola and Jose watched me carefully untie the white string and unwrap the newspaper. Inside was a small clay hummingbird with outspread wings. "What a beautiful shape and color," I said. There was a hole in its pointed beak and another hole in its tail. Jose pointed to the clay tail feathers and puckered his lips. "Blow on it," he said. I held it up to my mouth and blew. A very sweet sound came out, and I was thrilled. I handed it to Zoila to try. She pressed it to her lips and blew several successive notes. She handed it back. Hummingbirds seem to come to you, she said. The hummingbird is Lynn's little brother, Jose said, and your brother is a great warrior. He can lead you to the food that you need to live. Watch him and study his ways. The words were halting and accented, but I could easily understand him. A tranquil but powerful quality to his voice made me instantly alert. My head jerked up and I gazed into his eyes searchingly. A shiver went through me, like seeing the ocean for the first time. There was an intense power in his eyes, and a panther-like wildness. I felt a bond between us, the kind of bond that transcends nationality or blood or family, a binding of magicians of like kind. Welcome to our family, he said simply, his eyes shifting from the depth of the Pleiades to a soft twinkle. He tousled the top of my hair with his hands as if I were a young child, then turned to help Zoila with the packages of supplies he had brought. He slapped her affectionately on the bottom and winked at me. His face brightened with a big smile, and we all laughed and helped prepare chili rellenos for dinner. Over strong coffee after dinner, I began to realize that Jose and Zoila were like young lovers, yet they had the respect for each other that is built only through living together a long period of time. Jose appeared younger than Zoila, but still very protective and thoughtful of her needs. His tender thoughtfulness toward his wife set him apart from most of the other Spanish and Indian men I had encountered. I was fascinated by them as individuals and as a couple, and considered it a privilege to be in their company. My thoughts must have shown on my face because Zoila kept staring at me oddly, then spoke. When I met Jose 40 years ago, he thought he wanted to be a garage mechanic. I was already a curandera, because my grandmother was the best and most effective curandera from Solola in Guatemala. She raised me and taught me everything she knew about mountain spirits and plants. She knew the hidden designs of nature and the eternal fires within all things. She knew many things, and she helped me move toward totality. She shared with me her beauty and peace. Jose and I fell in love on St. Jeremy's feast day, but his family was afraid of me. Jose was 10 years younger than me, and I was a healer. His mother was a serious and strong, and she put up a terrible stink. Jose did not want to offend his madre, so he left me and went to Merida to work on trucks. I was very hurt, and I married someone else. This man was a drunk and a bad man. I ran him off after our first child was born. I could take care of myself. Then I heard that Jose had been taken very ill with hepatitis and fever and was dying. He had lost his will to live. So what happened, I asked. His mother and father brought him to me to cure. His mother wanted to know how much it would cost. I talked with her a long time. That day after, I had prepared medicines and herbs for Jose. I made her see that in wanting her own prestige, she had destroyed her son. Her greed and self-importance was blinding her to her son's wish for happiness. I explained to her that this was the reason that he might not live. She was angry and didn't want to believe me. But then she said a strange thing. She said that she would rather he would die than be stolen by another woman. She was so shocked by her own words that she cried. I treated her. She gave her consent, and Jose and I were married. She and I became friends after a while. I shook my head slowly and started to comment on Zoila's story. Jose held up his hand and said, "But that was only the beginning. I nearly died in a coma. That I am alive today is due entirely to Zoila's remarkable gifts. I had many strange dreams, and she helped me with the plans to cross over into the mystery. I know now it was shaman's sickness, and she healed me there. She taught me many things." "What did she teach you?" Jose smiled. "She taught me how to be alive." "During your illness? But you were nearly dead." "Exactly. And in more ways than you can count. I was in love with Zoila from the moment I saw her, but my family were strict Catholics. and I was afraid of their disapproval. I had to almost die to find my way back to her and to my true self. I had always been able to see people and what was troubling them. I wanted to be a curandero, but my family thought that that was wrong and the mark of the double. Besides, there was no one to instruct me. Jose smiled at Zoila. Zoila poured coffee into our gourd cups and then said, "My grandmother always told us that it was much better for women to marry men that are younger, because men tend to die 12 to 16 years earlier than women. Of course, in Mexico, women often get married in their early teens, and that makes life difficult. Sometimes, the customs of a people should be changed. I have many women friends who spend the last years of life without a husband to share it. That's a tragedy. It's those years when you could especially enjoy a husband." "I was lucky to find Zoila," Jose said. He had listened to the discussion carefully while leaning back in his chair. Then he commented, I have been gone a lot this past few years because people have heard of us. People far away need me. Don't you miss him, Zoila?" "Him? I can't wait until he packs his suitcase." She looked at Jose and smiled. Their eyes held for a moment. I could sense the complete understanding and alliance between them. She turned back to me and continued, "When people marry, they usually begin to live each other's lives. At that point, the reason for living is buried forever." "What do you mean?" "Jose and I have come onto this earth walk to learn very different lessons. I have instructed him, so we are both healers. But that doesn't matter. He works differently than I do and uses different powers. Because we both need freedom to grow, we are a part of a great deal of the time. Jose is also an apprentice to our everyday world. He is an apprentice to the fields and helps raise the harvest the crops of the henequen, as I work to raise the corn. Let no one doubt it. There is a great need for balance between substance and spirit. Many people want to become curanderos. What a pity they rush off into the shaman land of the curandero without tending to their home fires first. Here, we are speaking of foundations. If people follow their whims, spirits is not manifested on the earthly plane, where we need it the most. It's all well and good for a curandero to function well on the stomping grounds of the magician, but those who cannot function well on a day-to-day physical level at some point will have to return to start over in a bitter disappointment. If I were to say, Jose, we must have a routine in our lives like your mother did, he would shrivel up and die. His mother was like Chicomecoatl, the Great Mother. Remember her in La Última Madre ceremony? I nodded in recognition. She is the authoritative nurturer who sets her life by schedules and knowing things. Jose and I aren't like that. We want to dream and inspire people to heal and well-being. We live, for the most part, in unknown worlds. If I were like his mother, with the desire to always hold up the clock, I would have to learn to honor the difference between us and let him be. I would have to learn to love him unconditionally. That's not the easiest thing for nurturing mothers to do. They tie a lot of strings on their love. I poured myself another gourd full of coffee and thought about what Zoila had said. I found marriage very difficult because no one needed what I had to give. Zoila chuckled. "And your husband didn't understand your needs either, did he?" "Not at all. You see," Zoila asserted, "it is told that in the old culture of the Maya, women and men were taught like you were the other night. They were taught about the translation of Mother Earth's energy, and also about the female energy and how it reveals itself in a person. When we understand the great mothers in us, we can live in harmony and help fulfill each other's destinies. I believe many of the women in my culture have turned their backs on femininity," I said. "That's a great sorrow for our madre." Zoila touched the dirt floor with the palms of her hands. "If women cannot assume their totality as feminine, beautiful women, then men will never learn of their female side, and the earth will remain in great disharmony. Women say that it is the men who have created the imbalance on our Mother Earth. It is the men who have conjured our wars. But it is the woman's fault. We have permitted it. Men and women need each other. We need to learn from each other. That's part of what this life is all about. What do men teach women? I asked. Isn't there an exchange between them? Very broadly speaking, men teach women how to organize their consciousness, especially out in the everyday world. Women teach men about the sacred dream, how to receive and implement the wisdom of their consciousness. Women teach men how to live. Men teach women how to express their dreams and bring an exchange of energy back from the world, such as money or food or other material goods. But I see a lot of women make money without men. I said, straightening myself in the chair. Zola turned to Jose and then back to me. Yes, women today can earn money, but only if their man shield is well developed. If a woman is weak in her man shield, she will give and demand nothing in return. She will become a martyr. A man can teach a woman about that in many ways. We were silent a while. I could see that Jose was very tired. He had returned home from a long journey. Gratitude was in my heart for the fate that had brought me into the presence of these two superb people. I helped clean the table and wash the bowls. I excused myself and said that it was getting late, and I had better be returning to the hacienda. Jose offered to accompany me through the jungle, but I declined. Don't forget your hummingbird flute, Zoila said. We all embraced. And watch out for pumas, Jose said. I laughed as I walked away. Several yards distant, I turned to look back. Jose and Zoila stood in the doorway with their arms around each other. We waved and I continued on. The sky was vast and full of stars. My sandals crunched into the gravel of the dirt road. As I passed through the village of Llano, I felt lighthearted and very touched by the obvious love between Zoila and Jose. Human sounds seemed to carry further than usual that night. I could hear laughter in the village. I was walking at a quick stride. For no apparent reason, I felt a tingling sensation shoot through my body. I looked up just in time to see a shadow the size of a huge devilfish float off into the nearest treetop and disappear. I was certain I hadn't imagined it. My eyes darted around searching for the cause of this strange phenomenon. A cool wind had come up out of the underbrush and wrapped my flowered shawl more closely around my shoulders. The birds and the creatures of the night were entirely quiet. It was the same sort of quiet that settles in before an earthquake. I walked very quickly, imagining all sorts of spooky things. It was the presence of Red Dog that I had sensed. I was in complete terror by the time I had gone through the jungle and arrived at the hacienda. I ran up the stairs and opened the door to the room. Agnes greeted me. My chest was still heavy. I immediately asked, could Red Dog turn himself into a shadow that hovers above you and looks like a devilfish? And could he quiet all the animal sounds of the night? Agnes looked at me curiously. Why do you ask? Because, Agnes, that's what just happened. What happened? You're not explaining yourself very well. I explained as best as I could exactly what had occurred. Agnes was amused by my severe discomfort and patted my hand. Red Dog has many guises. I don't know what kind of fire that was you saw. If it was Red Dog, you can be thankful it was just reconnaissance and not an attack. Don't let it disturb you. Next time he'll probably kill you, and it'll be all over. Agnes, I said, stomping my foot. By and by, you are going to meet with him face to face, you know. He's afraid of you now, but that will make him all the more formidable. I'll hate to lose you, but you are a weak, defenseless female. Agnes! Sooner or later, she said, shaking her head. You better be with me, Agnes. She cocked an eyebrow. Get some sleep. After a bath, I crawled into bed and turned out the light. I stared at the dark wood vigas and touched of the ceiling. I talked about Jose and love and relationships until I realized Agnes was snoring. I soon fell asleep. Thank you guys for tuning in to another chapter. I appreciate it, and If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And yes, this was a very good chapter. A lot to think about. A lot to think about based on Zoila's experiences and explanations. You can get a lot from her. So meditate on what she said and try to connect it to your own life and own experiences. Thank you and bye.